Let's talk about the DCU. So, I really wanted to talk about this, bro, because James Gunn has stated that the DCU is not about telling a single linear story leading to one major bad guy. Instead, it's about building a cohesive universe where various stories and characters coexist. And and he really just highlights, as I said before, right, like this goal of creating a expansive setting for diverse narrative. So I wanted to ask you, like, what do you believe are the positives of the DCU going with having a lived-in universe, and what is what is the vision that you see with this approach?
So I love it, first of all, because what it means, I think, is that we are going to be. So, for example, we go watch Superman, all the characters have history. So, there are stories and things that have happened before we enter the DCU. So, and those stories could have created consequences for this world that we're just entering for the first time. So, we could be learning about these things that have happened in the past and we're now dealing with in the present. I think it's going to be really interesting. And I think that the way that James Gunn and the DCU is going to tell us about what happens and what has happened in the past is going to be really creative because it's not just going to be callbacks like, oh, this happened here. You know, you could see a clipping of a newspaper on screen. You could see something on the news. You could hear it in a conversation. It's not just going to be flashbacks. Like, I feel like whenever this topic comes up, people are like, oh, yeah, it'll be flashbacks. I think that is just short-sighted and oversimplified term for the scale of something like this. And James Gunn is super creative, so I'm sure he is going to do this. And it's also going to make this DCU feel very unique and different, especially compared to Marvel. Well, maybe not so much because the MCU is lived in now as well. We've been in the MCU for a long time. Maybe he's doing it to compete. I don't know. But I do think that it is something that's fresh and new. And I think one of the things that James Gunn is going to have to do for this DCU to be really successful is that it's going to have to be innovative and fresh and not just more of the same. You know, you're a competitor, you're not the same product. So we don't want the exact same thing from you. We want it to feel a little different, a little fresh, a little new.
That is a really great take that you just said there too about you are not you're not here to copy. You're here to find something and do something new. And
Right.
and you really and we were just talking about Steve Jobs earlier, right? About how Steve Jobs was a constant innovator, and that's what made him great, right? About how he was constantly trying to break boards and trying to find that next thing, which is low key hurting Apple, but James Gunn has to have that same mindset too. So that was a really great point. I'm really glad you said that. I am sick of origin films, so I'm happy
Yeah.
that James Gunn is doing this.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest examples is when they brought T'Challa in Civil War, right? And they with no origin, that's what really sold me on chalking origin films for certain characters, right? And I do think some characters might need an origin, but not all. And I am very interested in how, you know, I am very interested in how these rules and all of these things are going to be set for the DCU in general, because I have seen where James Gunn has said, that the DCU is going to be it's going to be more like Star Wars than the MCU, where where there's going to be a bunch of different tones and styles that exist within the same universe, and this kind of approach I think is going to make the DCU a lot different from Marvel in some way, because like we're going to get a super grounded detective story like a Batman with fantastical bad guys and stuff, but it's going to be very different from a mythological story of like a Wonder Woman story where she's fighting against gods and people like that, right? But it's all going to put his hands in the pot to this unified universe, and with the DCEU, right? Like we saw them contribute to a really dark universe, and I think that the darkness did help a lot of it make sense, in my opinion. So I am very interested to see how James Gunn is going a different approach where each tone is going to be different. And I'm very excited to see how that's going to fit into the DCU together. And obviously, we've seen that in comics, where there's different tones, but they all seem to fit. I am excited to see that in live action.
Yeah. You know what else, by the way? Like, just because, so they could do Origins without making it an origin movie. Black Panther kind of touched on his T'Challa's origin, but it wasn't an origin movie. But I think that fans are, overall a bit tired of the origin stories. But I do think that if we don't really know, like, or if it's a lesser known character, I think they do need to touch on the origin, because if people don't understand the character and how they came to be, it's harder to connect and understand that character.